Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is the final video in the Top 100 of 2021, to be specific, Top 100 Games of All Time, as of 2021. I haven't played 100 games in 2021. Maybe I have. I don't actually know. I'd have to check. Either way, that is the usual sidetrack, but let's go ahead and jump into this. This is the final culmination of the past 10 videos, Top 100. This is numbers 10 through 1. We'll be back next year with another Top 100, whatever new changes come our way and all of that. The past 9 videos, you can check them out on the channel, any of that. And no, I don't have another guest, sadly. Devin was the best. For those of you who catch the videos with Devin, he was the best. He's not here. That's unfortunate, and I wasn't able to get somebody else, unfortunately. Maybe I'll do a premiere or something so I can have a conversation in the chat. We'll figure it out. But in terms of this list, these top 10, first of all, as usual, I use PubMeeple as my ranking engine for this. I've talked about in other videos. Basically, I sort my games into general rankings, throw them into PubMeeple, get a list back, and then organize them however I think I need to overrule PubMeeple. But I'll link that down below. Great ranking tool if you want to do your own top 100. Or top 10 or top 20, whatever games you want to do. Past that, as far as the games on this list, there's one of these 10 that is new to me. One of these 10 games is a game that is new to me that was not on my list last year, and I hadn't played it last year. 5 of these are Kickstarter games, and let's go ahead with that and jump into it, starting with the new to me game, which is Aquatica. Aquatica, which this one's incredible. And part of that is the combination of the game being good, as well as the game being accessible and easy to dive into. Something that I often struggle with is the fact that there are some amazing games that are just hard to table, and therefore they don't get played. Aquatica is an amazing game that is easy to table. Now, this is one where I believe general BGG rankings have this around a 7+. That might be because I just like it more than them. It also might be because I think the base game is much better with the expansion. I think the base game is very good. I would have loved the base game too. But I think for it to be where it is right now on this list, the expansion is necessary. Aquatica does things that make it feel very different, very innovative compared to other games, specifically in the way resources are utilized in the game. The core idea is you have a hand of cards, similar to Concordia, similar to Century Spice Road, any of those games, and you're playing a card from your hand and then eventually picking all your cards back. So it's about trying to get more cards that are better for your engine, as well as being efficient with the card play that you do with your current engine, and then trying to take the various actions, which are getting more cards, they're getting locations, they're fighting for locations, they're buying locations, they're trying to get your little mantas on some of the extra cards on the top, depending if you're playing base game or expansion. There's different ways that works. But one of the things it does that's very innovative and interesting is as you conquer or buy locations have these rewards on the sidebar, and you slot these locations into your Empire board, and you're slowly going to be moving them up your board to cash in the rewards. So it's all about timing. This entire game is all about the timing aspect of how it plays out, of what's going on, and how it's going to work for you in your collection, in the gaming. That sentence didn't make sense. Ignore the last sentence. But base game is roughly half an hour. Expansion makes it around 45 minutes to an hour, but I love both of them. I'm happy to play the base game. If I want something shorter, I'm happy to play the expansion. I have not dived into the solo mode, and I have heard things about the solo mode being not as ideal, so take that into account before you buy it, because it does have solo, but I haven't tried it, so my opinion has nothing to do with that. But I play this at 2, 3, and 4. 4 runs a little slow, 2 and 3 are absolutely excellent, and still 4 I'd play as well. This is Aquatica. New to me, my number 10 game of all time. Moving on to a game that has dropped. Last year, this was number 4, and this is, if I can find it, where did I put it? Oh, I forgot to grab it. Where are we? Here we go. Sorry, I grabbed all the games from in front of the camera and forgot to grab the game behind the camera because my game's over there. I grabbed them all. I meant to grab this one and totally forgot, but fortunately it's in arm's reach. We have Cthulhu Death May Die. This was number 4 to me last year, and while I still love it, I still think it's an amazing experience. Yes, it has dropped to number 9, so it's basically terrible at this point. But Cthulhu Death May Die from CMON is, well, one of my favorite CMON games. In fact, I think the only real wait, no, never mind, I take that back. It's one of my favorite CMON games, let's just stick with that. One of the competitors to it, Zombicide Black Plague, dropped out of my top 10. It's now in my 11 through 20. But Cthulhu Death May Die is first of all, it's incredible. Second of all, is a big thing about it that I appreciate is the fact that I can recommend the base game of Cthulhu Death May Die without needing any of the Kickstarter extras or expansions. I think the base game offers a good enough experience on its own to see if it works for you, versus sometimes games like Zombicide Black Plague, I think it's great, but I think you do need the expansions for it to really shine. For Cthulhu Death May Die, the expansions give you more content, but it's not necessary to really enjoy it. This one is It is a cooperative experience in which you are basically playing as investigators trying to take down an elder god, Cthulhu, whichever one you happen to be playing against. And the way it works is a bit of a scenario pack where you have a You have a scenario you're playing with, and then you have an elder god you're playing against, and you play the combination of the two, which gives you different cards in play, gives you different maps, gives you different objectives, different ways the game will play out. And so playing through each scenario on different elder gods is a fun little way to add a lot of variability to the game. Base game comes with 2 elder gods and 6 scenarios, if I'm not mistaken, and you can get more as you get more content. Again, it's great, it adds more variability, but the core game is just fine as is. And you get more investigators as well, all those other things. To me, one of the things I love about Cthulhu Death May Die is the way investigators level up, by going insane, effectively. Sanity is a currency in the game, and as you take sanity loss, you are slowly approaching death. So you are going to be getting worse and worse as far as your chances of survival, but the fun part is you level up along the way. You get new abilities, you roll more dice, you get more powerful as you become more insane, which means, to me, every single time I roll sanity loss, I'm like, bring on the insanity. I welcome it. I love what it does to me. I love the fact that I am getting more and more powerful. Granted, it does mean that you might die at the end, which is a balance you have to be mindful of as you play through the game, and every scenario has its own little balance that you have to try to play through. It is fun, and I love the fact that it just escalates. Every single game of Cthulhu Death May Die ends in an escalation. The enemy's powering up and ramping up, but so are we, and so there's this massive power creep results in every single game me being uncertain until the final minute whether we are winning or losing. The enemy, the Elder God, is ramping up in power, but so are we, and so who's going to be able to take advantage of that power ramp more effectively? Who's going to shoot the other person? Who's going to be able to stomp into the other person's space? Who's going to trigger another loss of sanity when you cannot afford to go insane? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself as you possibly die, and most games will have some of your investigators dying, and I appreciate that aspect. I appreciate that most games will have some death, because it really gives that feeling. My biggest thing about cooperative games is when you win them, you have to feel like you could have lost, and when you lose them, you have to feel like you could have won, and Cthulhu Death May Die 100% brings that experience, that feeling to the table every single time I pull it out and play. I know there have been massive cries across the board for Command to come back with some sort of Season 3, Season 4. I don't know what their plans are, but it's a really popular game. I have to imagine that it will come back to Kickstarter in some way, shape, or form. To be clear, Command doesn't bring Kickstarters back, so there'll be a subsequent Kickstarter, a Season 3 or a Season 4, or maybe some re-theme of it. I don't know those aspects. I have to imagine it's coming back. I just don't see a way that they will let something that is guaranteed to be a few $1 million just slip through their grasp. But either way, who knows? Maybe they've gone insane. Anyways, next up from there, we have number 8. Number 8 is Vindication. Vindication from Orange Nebula. This is a fantastic game. Absolutely adore this one. This was number 10 last year. It managed to creep up 2 spots. And I love Vindication. I love it. Every single time I play it, it is a reminder of how enjoyable this game is. Because Vindication is basically a puzzle. It's a puzzle of trying to figure out how you can utilize the locations on the boards, the various options, the various cards you have, from companions to artifacts to relics, whatever you have on the table. You want to try to figure out what is... I don't think there are artifacts and relics. I think there's relics and traits. I just said artifacts and relics. There's not. There's relics and traits. But either way, you're trying to figure out all the cards on the table, how they work to your advantage as you figure out the puzzle that you need to solve to win the game. Are you going to be moving around the map a lot? Do you need to upgrade your mount? Are you going to be dancing back and forth between 2 spots and you can worry about your movement? It's just fine. Do other things to upgrade. Are you going to try to achieve your potential and move all your potential to your influence and your influence to your whatever? You're just trying to figure out how you're going to win, given a large variety of different facts on the table. It's meant to be thematic. The base game I don't find to be that thematic. I'm moving little tokens around the board and trying to convert things into other things to get the best engine of points up and running. Now, they do have the Chronicles expansion coming. I'll play with it. It might add theme, it might add downtime. I don't know what it'll add, but I'll certainly try it out. But I just love the fact that every time I dive into Vindication, it is a new game. Every time I dive in, it is a new puzzle. You can watch a recent gameplay I had with Devin and Quacklope over on his channel if you want to see that. I'll link to it down below if I remember. But it's a fun game. I just like Vindication. It is a joy to play. It might have a solo mode. I don't even know if it has a solo mode, honestly. Yeah, one of the things, in recent reviews, I've started focusing on checking the player count. Nope, 2 to 5 players, at least this one, but we'll see. Either way, it's not one I've played solo, I can tell you that much, because I didn't know it had a solo mode. I love Vindication. Rose to number 8 for me. I don't know what expansions will do. I haven't really played with expansions. I played with some of the few modules in the base game, but I haven't played with some of the other expansions. But I adore this game. It is excellent. It is amazing. It is my number 8 game of all time. And I'm curious. I'm always curious what happens next year. Do these things drop? Do they rise? In general, it's a challenge just to stay stable, because new things are always coming into the list. So things have to fight to hold their position. Speaking of fighting to hold the position, we have Too Many Bones. which was number 13 last year. So this is new to the top 10, not new to my list. This was actually 7 the year before. So 2 years ago, this was my top 10. Yes, I'm just holding this single thing from the trove chest because there's not a chance on earth that I'm lugging the trove chest over here to be on this table with 10 other games. It's a great table. I don't know if it'll hold all that. It would. I'm not going to do it. But either way, the trove chest, which by the way, fun fact, I've now actually seen the art on the back of this because I never actually pay that much attention. I usually just pick it on and off. But now I've seen the art on the back of the trove chest. I'm getting distracted. The trove chest, Too Many Bones, from Chip Theory Games. It was my number 7 2 years ago. It was my number 13 last year, so it dropped a bit last year. And then this year I played it a bunch again, specifically because of the fact that, well, they have this Kickstarter, this game found coming, the Too Many Bones Unbreakable. So I pulled it out to dive into it again, to see where it lies. Sometimes games drop over time. It did not drop over time. This is very much one of those games that's subject to recency bias. I talk about in other videos, but when I play games more recently, they remind me how good they are and they go up on the list. Fun fact. Vindication I put at 8 before my recent gameplay, so this one is just a great game. But recency bias is definitely a factor. As I play other games that are my number 11, maybe they'll creep up. I don't know, but for right now, Too Many Bones is absolutely amazing. The no game quite gives me the character growth, the character development that Too Many Bones does in a reasonably accessible playtime. It's technically a campaign game as you go through multiple missions. I find that you can usually knock out a full game in around 3 or 4 hours, going through multiple journeys on your adventure. It does depend. There's different game lengths, different player counts, so all these things take into account. I primarily play this one solo. Happy to play it at 2, happy to play it at 3. Not such a huge fan of it at 4. Also, it does get easier at higher player counts. It's one of the balance issues that they're known for, which is an issue for those who play at higher player counts. For me, I usually play at 1 and 2, and 3 is already the exception for me. But I really enjoy the puzzle of leveling up your characters. I really enjoy the tactical positioning, the tactical, and I know people don't always love the tactical positioning. I find there's a lot of tactical movement and positioning on the board, even as is. Not always, granted. Sometimes you can get various archers or other things in play that change that, but generally I find there's enough tactical positioning at play. But to me, it's the character development, it's the characters, it's the powers and abilities, it's the fact that every single character is literally a game unto itself in terms of a way to dive into it. I mean, we have games like Merchant's Cove, which I love, but saying, oh, this is an asymmetric game because they have different characters. This is an asymmetric game. This has characters that are a huge challenge to learn and dive into in a good way and a bad way. They represent a barrier to diving into a new character. You have to be willing to sit down and spend 15 minutes learning a new character to play it. But then the flip side is you have the reward. You now have a sense of depth and complexity that will add lifetime to the character. It's not simply a character you play once and move on from. You could play each character 10, 15, 20 times and still feel a sense of adventure and exploration as you level up their trees, as you figure out which pathways to grow, which stats to go up, and then combine that with playing with 2 characters, because even when I play it solo, I play two-handed, then you suddenly have a different puzzle of how they can support each other. So each combination of characters represents its own unique puzzle as far as how you're going to play through it. Love Too Many Bones, number 7 of all time. Back to where it was 2 years ago. Reclaimed its spot. Number 6, which was 15 last year. This is one that definitely rose, is... Which one's the front? This is... I don't know what's the front here. Can't really tell with the sleeve on. Here we go. Sleeve's that way. Okay, we have Everdell. Everdell from Starling Games. Everdell, this is the collector's edition specifically. That's why I have the sleeve on. Yes, it's probably on wrong. But... Everdell is a delightful game from Starling Games. I don't know if it's originally from Starling. I don't know who it's from. Either way, this is from James Wilson. Everdell it's got not really deck building. It has card drafting, but from a center, not from a whatever. And then you have worker placement from your creatures. You have a tableau. You're building up a whole lot of things in Everdell. I find that this is a game that I actually got rid of it the first time I played it. And then that's not entirely true. I played it, I liked it, and then a few months later I wasn't seeing more play, and I decided to get rid of it. But then I got it back because I had regrets. And I'm glad I got it back, as evidenced by the fact that it's my number 6 of all time. 15 last year, which I may or may not have said. But Everdell is delightful. Everdell is so much fun as you play through the card combinations. First of all, it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. The game is gorgeous, delightful to look at. All the expansions, all the meeples, everything is a joy to look at in Everdell. But then past the actual just visual aspect of it, it is so ridiculously enjoyable to dive into it. It's so ridiculously enjoyable to sit down and try to figure out how you're going to build an engine, how you're going to take advantage of the fact that you have a 15 card limit, you're building at 15 cards. And early game is going to figure out, you're just going to feel like you can't do even that. Early game you're going to feel like 15 cards, how am I going to even get like 9 cards out? Like these cards are a challenge to play. But that's because you need to build your engine, you need to get your engine up and running. And as you put down more cards, you build that engine, and you get more stuff the next time. And then you go into switch seasons, and you generate more goods, and use those goods to buy more cards. And then you place a worker, and you earn more workers. And all these different things happen in Everdell as you figure out how to chain your cards together, and chaining is a huge part of the game. Very often cards lead to other cards. Oh, you have that building? Well, then this card could be played for free, saving you those valuable resources for something else. A ton of fun. I haven't dived into all the expansions yet. I really need to. I've only played with one expansion so far, and that added a ton of variability to the game, which is important because I love the game Everdell, but I will acknowledge that the base game does have a lot of similarity, a lot of overlap as you continue to play it again and again. I still play it again and again because I'm constantly introducing it to new people, but I do like the expansions, and I feel the expansions, some of the expansions will add complexity. Other expansions just add more cards, but no complexity, just more stuff, more variability. Either way, I really enjoy Everdell. It's my number 6 of all time. Fantastic game that I love this one. I need to play more of the expansions. Again, as usual, whenever I do this stuff, I'm curious what the expansions will add, or whether I'll just get rid of them because they don't add to my experience. Next up at number 5, and this was 10 last year, it was 7 last year, it was 10 2 years ago, it was 7 last year, it keeps growing. And this is Cyclades. Cyclades, which I'm going to hesitate to overly put on its side for that long, because I have an unglued folded space insert in here. I need to glue it so it's actually ready to go. But Cyclades offers you some of the best. It's part of the Matago trilogy, which actually will be a quadrilogy soon enough, because we have Matago, we have Inish, we have Cyclades, we have Kemet, and then we have coming up, we have Yucatan. Let me flip that for you. Oh no, I need to get this on the other side. So we have Kemet, Cyclades, Yucatan. Yucatan's the one that's coming up, so we'll talk about that one at some future point. But for the point of this video, we have Kemet, which is my last video, it was in 11 through 20. We have Inish, which we'll talk about soon enough, and we have Cyclades, which has gone from 10 to 7, and now down to 5. Cyclades is so ridiculously enjoyable, and they have a second edition coming out at some point, so if you're interested in this game, you may want to wait to see what happens. I don't know exactly the details. I know it's not with Matago, sadly, but it's going to be republished with the second edition. I assume changes, tweaks, development, I don't know. I love the game as is. Like Kemet before, I was happy to upgrade, but I didn't feel the need to upgrade the game. Cyclades offers a variety of things in the game. The thing that has me interested in it, the thing that has me loving the game, is the fact that it's area control, which I already like as a genre, although I need other things around it, and the other things that it gives me is bidding. I love the bidding in Cyclades. You see, every single turn you're going to be bidding on which god you want, and that god will define which god's favor you're trying to earn, and that god will define what you can actually do. Which buildings can you build? What actions can you take? All those things are going to be defined by the god. You want to sit there and charge your troops into battle? Well, then you need the favor of Ares. But someone else is fighting for the favor of Ares, because both of you want to battle, and you can't both battle. Unless you have the Titans expansion, which changes the whole entire game. But the fact that you have to sit there and bid for what you want to do gives the game such a delightful tenseness, because it's not just about massive military power. Your massive military power is nothing if you don't have the favor of the right god, so you need to tactically manage your bidding, and it's not just about having more money. Because very often what you want to do is you often want to rank up the bidding, let that other person spend 12 to get their charging into battle, that's fine. And then next turn, because everyone's depleted of money because people spend so much time fighting, you can earn that same thing for 4, which means you can get several good turns if you're willing to give up a good turn now. That is a choice you have to make. The flip side is sometimes that choice is the wrong choice, because you might have your military forces conquered because you didn't win that battle. So a lot of tactical thinking to go on, but you're basically trying to manage the bidding, the area control, the powers and abilities. There's lots of powers and abilities, there's creatures, there's all these things you're going for. There's tons of expansions. There's Titans, which totally changes up the gameplay with these massive Titans that can start charging across the continent, adding you the ability to fight military battles without bidding for the favor of Ares. But then you have to get the Titans, which is its own different challenge. You have the Undead expansion. I can't remember what it's called right now. Blanking on the name of it, but you have all these different modules you can play with as well. Whole bunch of things, from heroes to relics to all these different things you can go into the game with. Tons of variability, tons of tactical depth. It is a game that climbs every single year for me, because I play it and then I'm like, this game is good. It is so ridiculously good. That's Cyclades, number 5 on my list. Which means it's number 4, which I just talked about. And this one has been dropping, still higher than Cyclades, but 2 years ago it was 2. Last year it was 3, and this year it's 4. So it's stepping down 1 year at a time, and this is Inish. Inish is amazing. And yes, it's higher than Cyclades, but if I had to guess, I think Cyclades will overtake it. Now, part of that is the fact that, well, I don't know what the part of it is. I think Cyclades gives me more variability because of all the expansions going on. Inish I love, and I think it's far more elegant, but as the years have gone by, as I continue to play Inish, I don't really discover new things quite as much. And the expansion for me, while fine, didn't do that much to change my opinion of the game. Most of the modules in the expansion seasons of Inish I found unnecessary. I like the cards they gave me. Most of the other modules didn't particularly care for. Versus Cyclades, there's so much variability that every time I dive into it, I'm finding something new, which is why I think Cyclades continuously climbs, and Inish, at a respectable 4 of all time, is slowly dropping. At one point it was 2, then it was 3, now it's 4. Inish offers you area control as well, but the core mechanism here is drafting instead. You're going to be drafting cards every single round to get your actions. This isn't a game where you have actions and the cards augment stuff. This is a game where the thing you're going to do is based on the cards you draft. So every single round, you are drafting the ability to do what you want. You are, again, similar to Cyclades in the fact that you want to do things, but you have to earn that right. Same to an Inish, just with drafting instead of bidding. But that means when I look at a hand of cards and I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, I can put down a Sanctuary and draw an Epic Power card, or I can charge into battle. You're getting one or the other. You are not getting both, and that is a tactical choice you have to make. Although, granted, for those who play Inish, I know there's a way to get both if you swap cards, whatever. We're not getting into that. Point is, you have to make hard, difficult choices in the game about what it is you want to do. You generally can't have everything. You have to choose which 4 actions are going to be the actions you take that round, and then you rinse and repeat, go into the next round, and go on again, again, and again. Now you're going to be driving for 3 different victory conditions, the rule of 6 basically, either being spread on different areas, or having control of sanctuaries, or having control over other chieftains, but all that's just the core engine that drives the game. You have to have a goal you're going for, and that's the goal. Everything about Inish is elegant. Everything about Inish is pure. It's clean. It gives you such ridiculously good gameplay on such a simple set of rules. The rulebook is tiny. I mean, honestly, the rulebook for Kemet and Cyclades are also pretty small, all things considered. But Inish is likely the most accessible of the games with the least amount to learn, although some of it's not always intuitive. Some of the aspects about battle and who's the initiator, who's the instigator, some of those things can be a little confusing to new players. But once you get over that hump, this is one of the best games I own in the genre. I have only played it at 5 once with the expansion. That was a quick game. It's the only game I've ever played that lasted a single round. Don't even ask me how that happened. We have to play with 5 again, but I think it's a game that works at 5. It definitely works at 4. 4 is my favorite player count. 3 is good. I have not tried it at 2. And 5 was a fun game, even though it only lasted 1 round. It made for a good story, at the very least. This is Inish from the Matago Trilogy, which means we have 3 of the Matago Trilogy in my top 20, by the way, which is consistent to 2 years ago and consistent to last year. They seem to stick around in there. And Yucatan, we'll talk about it more, but I have already played Yucatan. I don't know where it's going to land in the trilogy, but I imagine it would land in my top 20. We'll see. We'll find out. I need to actually play it a little bit more, but my first experience with it was definitely felt like a game in this genre, in this trilogy, quadrilogy, whatever. Moving on from there to my number 3 of all time. This is actually a fairly big drop. This one was number 1 last year, was number 1 the year before, and it is Blood Rage, dropping to a respectable number 3 on this list. The drop's not its own fault. The drop is the fact that I think area control, again, 1 to 3 is not a big drop. A regular reminder about that. But Blood Rage is a game that I think it's dropped a bit because I like other games more that continuously creep up. And area control, as much as I love the genre, I find Euro games get played a little bit more consistently, which will tell you that my number 1 and 2 are Euro games, and they are. But Blood Rage is from CMON, is my favorite, my highest ranked CMON game of all time, and it offers you just area control with drafting, which I love, and powers and abilities, asymmetric powers and abilities, meaning it doesn't start off asymmetric, it's developed asymmetry. It's the game that as you play the game, you develop out your powers, you grab cards, and suddenly your clan has this bonus, and you suddenly have that monster, and your ships are more powerful, and all these things are happening because you're picking and choosing. Like Inish before, you have to make difficult choices. You have to sit there and say, great, congratulations, I have that card, it doesn't necessarily help me, I need these other cards to make it work. It is about combining the powers and abilities you are drafting. It's about trying to anticipate what's going to be coming in round 2 and round 3 across the 3 edges of the game, and trying to think through how you want to build your tableau based on what you know right now, as well as based on what you're hoping will happen as you can gather more cards. And then you're jumping into battle, and I love the game is not punishing. It has a point escalation in the sense that you can have a bad first round and you'll be fine. If you have a bad first and second round, you're probably losing the game. But if you have a bad first round, you're fine. If you have a good first round and a bad second round, you might still be fine. But really, the third round is going to be the bulk of your points. It is most important to perform well there. How well compared to other players, plus your prior 2 rounds, those will all affect your point scoring. But another thing I love about it is the fact that this is a game where I have come in last and had an amazing time. It doesn't really bother me. I feel like I'm in the game, and suddenly we add up the points, and I'm like, oh, I'm 70 points behind the person in first. Oh well. But I had a great time. And gaming's not about winning, it's about playing. Yes, you want to drive for the win, but Blood Rage feels like you're driving for the win, even when you're behind by a decent amount because of the way the point scoring works, which some might argue is a flaw, but there's a ton of things to go for. There's quests, there's upgrading your abilities and getting all the 20-point bonuses and all those rows. There's just straight up driving for military victory every single time. There's the Loki strategy where you can intentionally lose the game to lose the battles, to get more points, more units, more whatever as you play. There are a ton of strategies to pursue. Arguably, Loki on its own is a little bit overpowered if you drive for that lose condition, but then it's up to the other players to also draft a few Loki cards. In my opinion, the only thing more powerful than a Loki strategy is actually trying to win while having a few Loki cards for those times that you want to lose. Because a player who's always trying to lose, you can predict around what they're going to do, and that means you can plan for it. Versus a player who's generally trying to win, but they have that one card, you never really know how they're going to walk into battle, and that has you completely uncertain and can throw some loops your way. Blood Rage is fantastic. Blood Rage is incredible. There's supposed to be a Blood Rage 2 in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what will happen or when it will happen. I don't know. I hope they backwards compatible to monsters or give new cards or something so I can utilize all the stuff I have. I love this game. Blood Rage is fantastic. It was my number 1 last year. It's my number 1 the year before. My number 3 this year. We're seeing some drops from Initial Blood Rage, but still, all in all, a fantastic experience that I can highly recommend. Moving on to my number 2, and this was number 19 last year. This one saw a big jump, if I can just find it. We have Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy was number 19 last year. It was not on my top 20 the year before that. And this one is my number 2 of all time. Castles of Burgundy is amazing. And by the way, this is the longest game in my collection. This and Seven Wonders are the 2 most outstanding games in my collection from the original games I purchased. These are the 2 we have left standing. So not only is it my number 2, but it's my number 2 with longevity that no other game can match. And Stefan Feld, I love Stefan Feld's designs in general, and this is my favorite one of his. It holds up year after year as you try to figure out the best way to build out your town. It's dice placement. You're going to be rolling dice, and then assigning them to take different actions. Actions to take tiles from the central depots, from placing those tiles onto your own depots, from trading them in for coins, or for selling your trade goods. All these different things are just ways you utilize your dice. But then the buildings you have on the board, and the way you're going to build out your own central, like, Castles of Burgundy, whatever it is, that's where the meat of the puzzle comes in, because there's so many different things. There's technologies that will help augment. There's buildings that will give you these extra layered actions. There's all these farm animals that will just give you tons of points. There's the castles that will give you extra actions. Everything is giving you something. You have to figure out how to place your dice in the most rewarding way. No other Stefan Feld game has rivaled the Castles of Burgundy for me, not yet. This one is the one that outlasts the others. I believe, well, I was going to say something, I'm going to forget that. It is an incredible game. They have the reprint. I still don't love the art of the game, either the new or the old. I'm fine with it. I do not love it. But Castles of Burgundy, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to sit there and build out your little duchies or whatever. Plays well at 2, plays well at 3. I will play it at 4, though it's not my preferred player count. It runs a bit long at 4. It's such a good game. I still have a few expansion modules I haven't tried. Again, the game could be in my collection for... That's a good example, by the way. Sometimes you have a game that's been in your collection for... What are we at now? 10 years? Something like that? 10 years, maybe? No, yeah, 10 years. 10 years. It's been in my collection for 10, maybe 11 years. And I still haven't felt the need to play with some of the modules and expansions. Some games don't need it. I've added some of the stuff that just very easily integrates, but things like trade routes or other stuff that they have in the box, I haven't felt the need to read the rules. I play this game every single year, time and time again. It continues to see play, and it delivers such a good experience that I don't need the expansions, even though I have them in the box. All this stuff that comes in here, I have all the stuff. I just don't need it to make the experience better. This is Castles of Burgundy, my number 2 game of all time, from Stefan Feld, up from 19 last year. I feel sad that it was only 19. It should have been higher. Which brings us to my number 1. My number 1 was my number 2 last year. It was my number 11 the year before. And give me a second while I grab this big box, because it is indeed a big box. This is Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars, it is the big box. You don't need the big box at all. The base game is totally fine as is, but Terraforming Mars has continuously grown for me every single year. This game has drafting, which I've talked about how much I love. It has some of the best drafting I have in a game. It has this aspect of your eyes are always bigger than your stomach, in the sense that you see these cards and you want these cards and you want to get these cards and hopefully play those cards. But you can't afford everything. You can't. You have to make decisions. Decisions based both on what you're actually going to draft, as well as what you're going to keep. How fast can you get your engine up and running? Are 4 amazing cards actually useful if you can't afford them right now? If you're just going to hold on to them for rounds at a time? The problem is, you pay for those cards when you keep them. So you're giving up resources now for the hypothetical promise of the future, which may never arrive. You may have 14 other cards that you like and prefer before you actually have a chance to play those cards. It is not uncommon to have a card that's been in your hand the entire game since round 1 or 2 in this game, because it looked cool and you want to play it, but it never became the right time to play it. Meanwhile, you're managing the area control aspect of the central board. The central board gives you a whole area control thing you're fighting for as you place down cities and trees, and you're trying to build at that. You have standard actions, you have goals, you have all these things you're going for. The basic idea is you're trying to terraform Mars. You're trying to get the water, or you're going to try to get 9 water tiles on the board. You're trying to get the oxygen to the right level. You're trying to get the heat to the right level, and you're trying to do that you're trying to do all of that so that, well, you're not trying to do that in and of itself. You're collectively trying to do that, but you earn points whenever you do. So you're all working towards the goal of terraforming Mars. Once you achieve that goal, game end will be triggered, but then you'll score up points based on how well you built your engine. It is one of the best, not one of the best, it's the best engine building game that I have played. It gives you that sense of drafting and tension as you go through things, the sense of choice as to what you keep and how you utilize it, and it's such a hard struggle of the game. And then it also gives you just rewarding tableau building, as everything makes your tableau stronger. You're buffing up the various resource productions you have. You're giving yourself more regular actions. You're giving yourself the competitive advantages that other players don't have, as you try to figure out the best way that you will win the game and not others. Maybe you have discounts on expensive cards. Maybe you get money every time you play an event. Maybe you just have a ton of steel production and you're using that to charge your engine again and again. Maybe you've managed to get the most goals because you found certain cards that work together and you have 3 goals and no one else has any, and that's 15 points, which can be huge in a game that goes to 80 to 110 points, some of that range. There's a ton going on in Terraforming Mars. This is one that I have incorporated a bunch of the expansions. I found Turmoil. Turmoil doesn't work for me as well. It adds. I like what Turmoil adds to the game, but I found that it adds too much length to the game. But a Prelude is essential. It's an essential expansion for the game. I have not tried Venus Next. I like Colonies a lot. Colonies adds a little. It doesn't add a lot of game time. It adds a little bit of complexity to the game. The standard board I like a lot. I have played with a bunch of the expansions. I still have more to go into, but this is Terraforming Mars, which to me is my #1 game of all time. Climbing from 2, climbing from 11 the year before. The problem with being #1 is there's nowhere to go but down, but we'll see. We'll see how long this one holds up. And I love this, by the way. This big box over here, I was very concerned when I got the big box that it would add setup time and storage time and make it harder to table, but it doesn't. The big box actually works incredibly well. If you're on the fence about this, I have found that the big box works incredibly well. It does not limit storage time. It does not limit setup time. It is just as easy to sit down and play the game, and yes, it looks better when you do so. That is everything. These are my top 10 games of all time as of 2021 and all that. I'll be back with more lists and stuff as the year continues. I'll be doing my top 10 of 2021 somewhere into 2022. I like to give myself a little more time to get through them all. Not all, but more of them. But we'll see. It's a lot of games to play. There's never enough time, but we'll do what we can. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this top 100. I'll see you next year with the next batch. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and have a good one.